What up, YouTube? This is Steven, and welcome back to another book review. In this video, I'm going to review the book The House on Mango Street by Sandra Cisneros. And I heard about this book for a while, but this is pretty much my first time actually reading the book. And, overall, I enjoyed reading the book. I personally like that the book has kind of like it's broken down into what they call vignettes, which is basically like pretty much like kind of like very short chapters that don't really seem to be directly connected. Like it's not one flowing story like how books usually go. Like from chapter to chapter, like the story continues by each chapter. It's not like that. It's more like seemingly random stories that sort of connect, And I personally like short chapters because I use chapters as checkpoints a lot of times, and a lot of times I don't like to stop in mid chapter. So it makes it easier for me to have a checkpoint, But if you're not OCD about that like I am, then it probably wouldn't matter either way. But I heard that some people didn't like the short chapters slash vignettes, but me personally, I do. And also, I think later on after Sandra did it, I think also Sandra Cisneros did it as well in her first book, Chicana Fossa. But before both of them did it, I do want to give a mention and shout out to Tomás Rivera, who did it in his book No se lo trago la tierra, or Hice y no se lo trago la tierra. Lo siento. But yeah, he did it in that book, aka The Earth Didn't Devour Him in English. Well, and The Earth Didn't Devour Him in English. And he did it in that book. I'm not sure if he kind of like originated it within, the, Mexican American slash Chicano slash Latino American slash Hispanic American community. I don't know. But I do know he did it before both of them. So I just want to give him a shout out. But back to The House on Mango Street. Pretty much it's just a kind of like a collection of short stories. Very interesting at times, very random at times. One story is about her and her relationship with her name, and sometimes she's, she didn't like her name because she felt it was just too much, like Esperanza, and it means hope in English. Then there was another story that I really found like just very interesting and even funny. It was it was the story about, I think it's called Louis, his cousin, and his other cousin. And like one of his cousins came and he had like this new car, and like the Esperanza and her friends wanted to take a ride in it, and he took them for a ride. But then like at one point, like the cops showed up, and then he was like, everyone get out the car. And then everyone got out the car, and then he drove off, and then he ran into a light pole, and then he was apprehended by the police. So I'm like, did you really steal a car, then go for a joyride with a whole bunch of kids, and then crash into a pole? So yeah, that was one story that stuck out. It's like a really funny story. Another story that stuck out to me was probably Red Clowns. That story is more serious. That story is pretty much about Esperanza being sexually assaulted at a carnival. Um, and it kind of took place, you know, her friend told her to meet her by the Red Clowns. Her friend was never by the Red Clowns. Um, and I think she wound up being sexually assaulted, more or less. They don't go into details about the sexual assault, which I don't mind. But yeah, pretty much something like that happened. And also, that's sort of a theme in the book, to an extent. Like a lot of the men being kind of like sexual. Like I know, like this, um, like one story, like Esperanza and her friends like wore some high heel shoes and they were walking around the neighborhood, and then like Mr. Beanie, like the guy who owns the grocery store, had told them like they need to take those shoes off. They're not old enough to be wearing those shoes. And then they run off. And then they wind up coming across this homeless guy who's all like, "Oh, I'll give you $1 if you give me a kiss." And then one girl was thinking about it, but then they wound up grabbing her and running off and going back to the house and taking off the shoes. But yeah, I thought that was kind of like that was a interesting story too. Kind of like you know starting to maybe come of age. Wanting to experience what it's like to be a woman. Um, but yeah, a lot of the men in the story, well, not a lot, but a few. That's kind of like reoccurring theme though. Like the males in the story sometimes seem to be kind of like almost sexual predators. Like the homeless guy, and then there was another guy, older guy at work where Esperanza worked her first job, and then he like basically just forced his kiss on her, and then the whole red clown situation too. Um, so yeah, it seems like her neighborhood, so probably a little more so kind of like watch your back, which a lot of neighborhoods and just society in general is like that at this point, really, you know. Um, but there's definitely one more thing I want to touch on, which is kind of like Esperanza, longing for a home, and I can relate to Esperanza in that aspect, definitely. Um, Esperanza wants a place that she can call her own, a space all of her own in this world. She just wants a space for herself, and her parents are like, "Oh, once we win the lottery, we'll get a home," and they play the lottery and they don't win. And the cycle continues and continues and continues, and Esperanza at that point is just like whatever. Like once she hears lottery, she just zones out. She just stops listening. Um, and also another theme of hers is like longing to leave this neighborhood, and to explore outside of the community. And um, one of the older women, coming to her and telling her like, you are Mango Street, whether you think so or not, you are Mango Street, and basically don't forget where you came from, and come back for those and help those leave as well. Basically don't just leave the community, but at least come back to the community and try to help out in the community as well. Because everyone doesn't have as much, mobility, social mobility as she does, Esperanza. Um, and I think she did internalize that, you know. But overall, I enjoyed reading the story. Well, the stories, but ultimately, I enjoy reading the book. Um, you know, I'll probably end up reading it again at one point or another. You know, it was like for me, it was kind of cool to see, like, get a touch and glimpse of like another aspect of American society. Although one thing I noticed that they didn't really talk about Esperanza's relationship to Spanish, like the language, the Spanish language. I wonder what it is. I guess this might not be because she pretty much publishes her books in English, so I'm guessing she's probably like if she does speak Spanish, she's probably speaks it as a foreign language, and English is probably like her dominant language. But I don't think she mentioned that in the book. Although she mentioned her mother being able to speak both Spanish and English. And also one story about her mother where it was like basically her mother encouraging her not to sort of like pretty much to be somebody, because her mother was like, I could have been somebody, but she didn't take advantage of the opportunities. So she's encouraging Esperanza to do that, you know. But overall, again, a good read. I read the book in like a day. I took breaks in between as well to do other things. So, but ultimately, it's not like a read that you will have to devote like weeks or like a week or, a whole, like a long period of time to. It's like a nice read, a nice, easy breezy read. It's not really extremely wordy, which some people may have criticism on that. But like good stories don't have to be wordy, have to, show your literary merit, to tell a good story. Sometimes it can be a distraction. Sometimes you don't need all the hype and, the fancy wordplay and all that to tell a good story, you know. But there you have it. So what do you guys think? Feel free to comment. Feel free to subscribe. Feel free to give me a thumbs up. Your feedback and support are extremely appreciated and extremely valued. Until the next video, adios and goodbye for now.